Hey everybody, welcome back to the Windows Azure websites deep dive, jumpstart, craziness of everything.
And the lightning round.
And we're in the lightning round.
Deep dive, jumpstart, lightning round.
So this is like electrifying the pool now, and you're diving in, and this is going to get a little bit crazy. So we anticipate that if anything goes wrong, that it's going to be here. Now we've made a decision. We've got about half an hour left. We've got 6 really cool projects that use different aspects of the cloud, and so rather than dive in and cover all the technical stuff on a very detailed level, we've made the call here that we're going to demo everything. I'm going to post as much of the code as we can up on GitHub. You'll be able to get at that from our blogs, and just follow us on Twitter. And we will make sure that we share all of the code as much as possible. There's also the resources. We've both got books published. You can follow us on Twitter, ask us questions. We're going to help you out. But for now, we're going to demo all of these different cases that we've got. We're talking multi-platform, multi-environment, multi-boundary.
There you go.
Multi-crazy. And
no limits.
No limits. This is as much as we're going to go. So welcome to the lightning round. We're going to try and get through all of these as quickly as possible.
First is hybrid.
Hybrid connectivity. What does that mean?
You know what hybrid is? Connecting Azure applications into your data center.
Excellent.
Awesome.
We're going to talk about scaling SignalR using Service Bus. We've got this really cool pub sub thing. I've got it out in the cloud. How do I make it bigger?
You have an enterprise app. Authenticate with Office 365 domains.
Okay, I'm not even interested in .NET, but this cloud thing seems interesting. I want to use Node.js and MongoDB. How does that work?
Distribute your storage objects.
So don't use the stuff that's baked in. We come up with a different way of serving things out. And then finally, we're going to go cuckoo bananas here. We are going to try and get a Windows 8 app running with an MVC app with Web API running in the background. And then we're going to use Windows Azure notification services. And we're going to actually do like some Toast pop-up stuff here on right live, because there's zero risk at all in trying to make all of that sing together, right? Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's start off hybrid connectivity.
Hybrid is about connecting your existing website into your data center, right? Let's drill down into the demo.
Right, okay, excellent. Pop right into the demo. You've got it running on.
I have it running. So how this is working is I have something called a port bridge. It was a tool written originally by Clemens Vasters. Right, so we have enhanced that to Service Bus 2.0, and how it works is the same MVC music website that we discussed in the previous module, we have converted to hybrid. What that means is we have moved Elasticsearch from Azure VMs into my machine here, real time, on my desktop. Right?
Okay.
So let's look at how it's working. So this is the Elasticsearch server running on my desktop here, indices into cluster
Right,
state.
I can see right on the screen there, it says you're doing command.exe elasticsearch.bat. So there's actually something running right here on your machine.
Absolutely, and Kill Power is the name of the instance.
Okay.
It's just super cool for this round, right? The next one I'm doing is running something called Port Bridge. Now, Port Bridge uses Service Bus. It's an abstraction layer. It's a tool that sits on top of Service Bus, Windows Azure Service Bus, to connect your Azure website into applications running in your data center. So it doesn't have to be Elasticsearch. It can be your CRM app, right? It can be your secure database app, or it can be anything.
Okay,
as long as it supports TCP.
So there's some configuration that has to go on here. You detail that though in...
It's in the slides.
Perfect.
And it's going to be available.
Okay, excellent.
So then I started portbridge.exe. Now portbridge.exe has connected into Service Bus. Now let me go to the portal. So there is Port Bridge. If you go into relays, I'm using Service Bus Relay. So Port Bridge tredker-w530. So this is the endpoint my local Port Bridge is establishing into Windows Azure. Now it's available for Azure websites, cloud services, VMs, or any application in the world to talk to this Elasticsearch engine through Port Bridge. Right? So now I have these two running locally. And then remember that pweek VM?
Yes.
Right? From the last module. I'm just reusing it to run something called a Port Bridge agent. So now what Port Bridge agent is it's another abstraction layer. It's exposing an endpoint on the other side of Service Bus. Right? It's a little complicated to understand, but it's detailed out in the slides. Right? And when I talk to this website, I go to mvcmusichybrid.azurewebsites.com. Right? I click on classical. So this is exact same code. There are no changes to the code other than pointing the endpoints, right?
So those services are now pointed towards your machine rather than to something that's running in the cloud.
Yeah, so now the request is going from Windows Azure website into my pvik VM, right?
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah,
hey,
and
right on.
what is happening is this port bridge agent is looking at the service bus endpoint.
Okay, so I would say then that I would guess then that if you make another request there, pick a different genre, we're going to see more stuff show up here in Port Bridge Agent.
Yep, but it pools connections also. So it's not 1:1.
Oh, I see,
So
gotcha,
it pools
okay.
connections, and it has some local firewall capabilities also.
Okay.
So now the request from pvik VM, so what this port bridge agent is doing, it's connecting to service bus endpoint that I showed earlier, right? So this is the endpoint. It's connecting to this endpoint with the net TCP relay type.
Okay,
Right?
excellent.
And then that request is coming back on my machine through the port bridge server, back to Elasticsearch, and back home, back to the user.
Right.
Right. So it's going from Azure into my desktop and back into Azure. So if you want to hit it, just hit it. Let's break it down. Right? Break it down. So another thing is, if you want to verify that, so if I go to pvik VM, right, 9200 plugin head. Now, what do you think is happening here?
Well,
Right. So
let's see. Yeah, okay.
what is happening here is the request is going into pvik VM. Now, this browser is not caring what is happening. So this HTTP request is going to this pvik VM. The port bridge agent is intercepting that request and forwarding that request to the port bridge service running on my machine and then to Elasticsearch. And the index is delivered from my machine into the VM. So this index is restored or this index shows up from my local desktop.
Wow. So if you did a re-index locally, then that would be enough
Yep.
to right.
Yep.
Wow.
So
okay.
any Elasticsearch command is going to go to my machine through this VM. Right?
Excellent. Okay.
All right.
So that's actually an important thing. Let's pop back to your portal for a second there, and I want to show something you had pulled up in there. Service bus. I see we've got queues, topics, relays, notification hubs, and then there's the configuration as well. Can we move on? Let's pop
Absolutely.
over. Okay, so let's go now back to the slide deck really quickly. We're going to be talking about scaling SignalR using Service Bus. Now, basically the idea here is with SignalR, again, we talked about it before, it's this pub sub idea. I want to make sure that it's super easy for my users to be able to scale. SignalR gives us this easy way to kind of go up in the cloud, and we're going to leverage Service Bus as our example for that. So I'm going to look at my scaling SignalR. This is my website here. All we're doing in this, I'm going to browse this site really quickly, pull up another guy here, and I'm going to go to just /chat. And then in here you can see I can type in just hello, hit send. Hello, it just echoes back. Now the thing is that you can go here and you can type in and it's going to come back as well for me. I'm not terribly too interested in that. Everybody who would be connected here would be fine. But if it starts to be too much for my instance here, then I want to make sure that I'm able to scale out and whatnot. So in order to scale out, I can't have SignalR, the hub for SignalR, running on just one box. It needs to pass through. So what I've done is I've gone into the Azure portal and I've set up a service bus. Where am I here? HD Insight. I'm forgetting the icon
down
here.
It's down. It's down below.
Down below. And it's this guy here. No, that's Traffic Manager. Sorry. Where am I? Active Directory. Service Bus. There it is.
Service Bus,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm not very good at iconography. So here we've got a Service Bus that is called, we've registered the scaling SignalR namespace, and we've got a topic that we've created as well. And this topic is going to be what we need to actually, I'm going to pop in here. We can see the information that we've got here. And popping back into my solution now, I'll have a look inside of Visual Studio. This app is just a simple app. I've got a chat controller where I've got an index page in here, a little bit of code to wire up SignalR. This stuff is basically demo stuff. You can pull this off the web, no problem.
This is JavaScript, basically.
This is some JavaScript that makes a connection to the server, but it's then what happens on the server that becomes interesting. If I go back to my my startup here, I've got these 2 lines of code. One of them is just going to retrieve the connection string from my app settings, again, something that we can configure out in the cloud, and then I'm going to set my global host dependency resolver use service bus. I'm going to make that call using this guy right here as the topic, and that's going to be what we use. Now that connection string that's something you want to keep confidential. It's going to be something that you can use in different environments, those kinds of things. But more importantly, that's all I need to do. I hit Shift Control B, I get a build started here, and then all I have to do is publish this guy. My build succeeded. I hit publish. And again, it's one of those trust me things because we're moving very quickly here. But all of a sudden, I've got scaling SignalR back up in the cloud. And if all goes well, I'm going to hit my, again, we're back to that cold state. Now we're warm. I'm going to head over to my chat controller. Just going to give it a second to breathe so it registers and service bus is lit up on topic and all of those things. I'm going to type hello now. Hopefully that was enough of a dramatic pause. And there it is, hello. And that's a message now that's come over the wire and back on. And then there's a hi again. So somebody is out there, they type in the website, perfect. Thank you very much for helping demonstrate that it's not just a single source
I'm not
application.
typing that.
Yeah, it's not you. So
it's not me.
Thanks, whoever that was, perfect. Okay, excellent. So that's SignalR in a nutshell. So let's go, we'll head back to the slide deck here and we'll figure out what's next on our list.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with people who want to be enterprisey and Active Directory or whatever the case
Let's
may
go
be.
to the slide deck because there are some few slides that I want to cover before I demonstrate.
Excellent. Okay, so identity with Office 365.
Yeah, so people think that the website is not for enterprises, which is not true because enterprises basically are tied by identities and Office 365 is a cloud-based software as a service which provides you Office-based services. Right? And it has an identity. You can federate your Active Directory into Office 365. Now you want to write a website that federates with this identity. So let's go to the next slide. So in Visual Studio, you can create a website and there itself you can specify what kind of federation you want in Visual Studio 2013. You can specify that you want single sign-on with Office 365.
Right. Okay,
And
so
then when
we
you deploy your website, that just works.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that just works. So.
Beautiful.
Let's go to the next slide. Let's not worry about this slide at all.
Okay, we'll just keep going.
Yeah, just
okay, we'll
keep going.
going.
So let's say you register for Office 365, you get a domain, and then this is the domain, the Dynamic Deploy LLC on Microsoft.com that we have registered. Once you have the domain through the Office 365 portal, you create users.
Okay, now we need to configure
these are
our
domain
app.
users, enterprise users, right? And then you create the website. Just plain old ASP.NET website. In the organizational accounts, you specify you want cloud single organization, right? That assumes that you are going to use Office 365. And you specify your Office 365 domain and app ID URL, which you can get from the Office 365 portal.
Okay, and then we need to do something on the portal again.
Create a website, which we have been creating all day.
Right.
So you can.
That's easy enough to do.
Yep.
A couple important notes here.
Yeah, so a couple of important notes you need. So by default, when you create an ASP.NET website, it creates ASP.NET database for you, right? So you need, when you migrate that website, make sure that that database from app data folder is moved or migrated to SQL Azure. So that's a caveat. And it's not documented well enough. So just keep that in your mind. And then make sure all your configuration settings, web.config, the reply URL where you are going to get the federation authentication request back along with the token into your website, it's configured properly.
Okay.
Right? So these are the two important steps. So this is the XML
that we would use. Okay, excellent. And then we do the publish
Publish,
step.
and in the publish you specify the domain you want to associate your website with. Let's go to the next step. And that's how it authenticates. Now let's...
Okay, excellent. Let's have a look at that and see what that looks like.
Yeah, you would think this was the demo daemon.
Well, something is wrong here. I'm seeing the yellow screen of death.
Yeah, I just fooled you. So read the message, right? The screen is unpopular, but the messages are really important, right? So cannot authenticate the user because the URL scheme is not HTTPS. It's so simple. So in the web.config, if you go back, we specified that we want HTTPS to be a required protocol.
Right.
So now I just go to the address bar, add S here, and then I get now this is an Azure website, Windows Azure website. Now it's redirecting me to my Office 365 website, right? So now if you see on the top, it's login.microsoftonline.com. Now here, I type in my username. This I've created this user beforehand, right? In my domain, I add my password and then sign in. Now what is happening is Office 365 is authenticating me against my enterprise user identity, my enterprise users in its Windows Azure Active Directory store.
Okay.
Right? Now you can federate that Active Directory store with your Active Directory on premises. That's a different session of its own, right? So we don't want to get in there in lightning round. But the idea here is you can build websites for your enterprises and authenticate those websites against Office 365 domain. So if you see here on the top, I'm authenticated and my identity is dynamicdeployllc.onmicrosoft.com.
Excellent.
So that's the demo.
Perfect.
Let's go back to the slide deck and see where we stand.
Okay, so we want to now move on. We're going to look at something that's completely off the .NET stack, and that's Node.js and MongoDB. Really just a kind of a quick note here. We're saying, the cool kids are doing it, right? We're saying there's a lot of stuff going on right now in Node.js. It's a vibrant community. It's growing quickly. Lots of plugins, lots of templates, and the really cool thing about the way that they've implemented Node.js on Windows Azure websites is they're doing it the way that it has been done all along. So it just works. Everything that you would expect about a Node.js deployment, i.e. the hook into Node.exe, and then you specify some config stuff to start your app.js. All of those things, all of those configuration pieces and wirings are just working. So I'm going to flip back over to my demo, and we'll just escape out of here, throw up our development environment, and just as I get into that, I want to show you that there's this great tool set called Node.js Tools for Visual Studio. It's a plugin that you can download.
It was recently released.
Recently released, I think like just midway through November. It's this brilliant tool set that basically takes Node.js development for Visual Studio and makes it awesome. So there's just a ton of tools. I'm not going to have time to do it justice in 2 minutes and 43 seconds, but we're going to try and do our best here. So one of the really cool things, I've got it kind of kickstarted here from an existing Node.js code base. I can actually now just pull up some existing code. So I'm not going to do that right now, but basically if you've already got your Node app, that code base set up and ready to go, you can just suck it in, and it's just going to wrap it with a Node.js project type. Mm-hmm. And that's where this thing really shines, is it's actually wrapped itself around everything that's good about Visual Studio, and then it gives you everything you know about working with Node. So, for example, a common profiling tool is the V8 engine that's used in Node.js development. Well, they're using that. So it's exactly what you would expect to be using for profiling. But then inside of Visual Studio, we have this great performance metrics and profiling capabilities with this wonderful graphing and things that show you really good introspective looks at what's happening in your code as it's executing. Well, it's taking that V8 engine, sucking out the reports out of it, or sucking out the performance metrics out of it, and then putting it into the reporting stuff that we're already used to inside of Visual Studio. So there's a rich experience around that as well. I've got this project already staged and in here. So I'm going to remember this is just at nodejstools.codeplex.com. It's in some of our resources, obviously in the slide deck and whatnot. So check that out. Be sure to check that out. Now I've got this running in here, and again, this wonderful toolkit. What it's doing is it's node aware. So this is actually now a better environment than we were looking at before with WebMatrix. WebMatrix is a really great tool, and it gave developers for Node.js some great features right off the hop to start Node development on Windows Azure, but this is the perfect complement to Visual Studio.
Yeah, this is the next level.
Exactly, right.
This is the hardcore level.
So you can see here that as I start dialing in, it's giving me information about anything that it's known, any of the packages that are here or whatever, and I can require these libraries. There's IntelliSense, and it's saying, DNS gives you these capabilities, and it's going to help you come up with, the types of things that you need. So
it includes documentation, basically, and not best practices, but guidance.
Exactly. And in most cases, this is still a work in progress, and I'm sure that things like the Jade View engine and the syntax that you've got here here. This will expand and we'll get color coding and IntelliSense and everything. This is still just in preview mode and it's already just full of awesome. So this is a simple app. It's an Express app again. It's got this idea of the task list that's going. I'm going to jump right into my portal here and back to my websites. I do know that icon. That's an easy one. Won't get lost there. And I'm going to look at the Node ABCs and hit my site. And it's this idea of this checklist that we had before, or whatever. So this would be a great way for your team to get started with experimenting with some Node.js stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I've got an active deployment here. We're obviously cold, but we will wait for this guy to spin up. And we've got a 500. Look at that. Well, we couldn't have gone the whole day without doing it. So obviously something has triggered and gone awry here. But no, we'll leave him. We will not call in right now. We're going to leave it. But we were running that earlier, and we had a look at that. And it's just that simple checklist, task list kind of thing or whatever. So we don't have time to try and debug it today. That's okay. Again, we'll make the code available to you after the session is complete here today. So again, though, super easy development, deployment, all of those things right from within Visual Studio.
And it just works.
And yeah, it just works.
But you forgot about our friend, right?
Famous last words. Okay, excellent. So let's actually pop back to our demo deck here. Our next bit that we're going to talk to is storage object distribution pattern. So
cool.
Can you give us some background here, some insight as to what's actually going on?
Yeah, so I have built this website called dynamicdeploy.com, and I'm building a Windows 8 app for that. And so I have a friend who's helping me build that Windows 8 app. And when he was accessing the web services, he was saying that the initial upload of that data of those objects was taking some time. And when I did some research, I did some monitoring and diagnostics, and I found out that these compute services are expensive. It's already running session, it's already running cache. And on top of that, I'm adding this overhead. So what I came up with is distributing that object as a JSON object into Windows Azure storage. So let's go to the next slide.
Sure.
So let me first describe the pattern, right? It allows you to leverage the scale and bandwidth of existing storage services, right? And yet access application objects like if you were calling a REST API.
So this is a very cheap way to serve data because you can take advantage of things like caching then
Exactly,
right away, right?
HTTP caching, and you take advantage of the massive storage scale, right? Windows Azure storage is massively scalable.
It's cheap, it's pennies per month,
yeah,
right?
compared to compute, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now if you are adding caching overhead on top of compute, then it's still an overhead and you're paying for it.
Right.
So basically what we did was we iterated over the objects and distributed those objects as JSON objects into Windows Azure Blob Storage and let the client point to that JSON object. And we added custom domain on top of Windows Azure Storage. So the clients are thinking they're accessing compute, but behind the scenes, it's accessing storage object.
Right.
So we are basically fooling the client that, yeah, this is the object. At the end of the day, clients just want objects. Right? It's how you deliver it. So you have to be smart in delivering it. So in the cloud, you have a lot of options. So if you won't be able to do this on premises. I mean, technically you would be, but there won't be much advantage because you won't have that kind of a storage environment.
Exactly.
Local, right? So let's go to the next slide, please.
Sure.
So common scenario, your website has static, semi-static objects that require low latency, mobile access, let's say customer profile, gaming apps. This is the traditional architecture, right? How you would build, whether in cloud or on premises. So you have customer objects, product objects, and mobile devices, websites, web services, all are accessing those objects.
There's one really important word on here, and that is bottleneck.
Bottleneck, yeah.
Okay.
So all of them are getting into that database. So you have to keep that database free of objects that can be cached outside of that.
Okay.
So this is the architecture that we built, right? So we built a distributor, which is a service which runs as Windows Azure Cloud Service, or it can just run as a thread. If your database is small, right? It can run as a thread. It can run hourly, every 15 minutes, depending on your requirement. It captures those objects and distributes those objects into Windows Azure Blob Storage with HTTP cache enabled, right? So let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so there is some code on how we built this, right? So we created a blob extension for setting cache control, right? And then set content type,
Okay.
right, to JSON, because these are JSON objects.
Exactly.
And then cache control. Let's go to the next slide.
And here's
And then
another
this
snippet.
is the distributor. So you get those objects, you create a simple web client class, instance of a simple web client class,
Okay.
and you point to that storage, Windows Azure storage, and just put that blob into that storage with appropriate container name.
Okay,
That's all it is. And this is the public container, so anyone can access it.
Okay, so there's our put, and then we actually have, we're returning our result here as well, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so
And you're setting the cache control. If you see, that is the key. So because you want the objects to be cached on the client side, enabling HTTP cache, right?
okay. So this is a position that the products. This was the position that your friend was running into.
Yep,
right?
exactly. So this
Okay.
is in the slide. So storage object distribution pattern for products. This is in dynamic deploy, running live. So This
Okay.
is live right now.
Right. Okay.
right? So because we are testing it.
And
it's
there's
go-
a test
This is
URL
the
that
link.
they can run to,
Yeah,
and then
you can just access that link, right? And then refresh that link in the browser, and you will see that it's picked up from the local cache.
so here
And
we've
if you
got.
run Fiddler,
Yep, and this is what we've got the result up of Fiddler
Yeah.
right here. This is the
First
important-
request.
Yeah, and the second request.
Yeah.
So this right here is a wonderful way to reduce
save
costs.
cost. Yeah.
exactly.
Compute is expensive, storage is cheap, right? So leverage as much storage as possible.
Okay, so our next piece that we're going to talk about is push notifications. We're going to try and get through the push notifications piece as well. So we've got a couple of things here that we're going to talk about. The Windows 8 app itself, Web API, and WNS. So if you could fill the viewers in on a little bit about each of those three pieces, I'll get my demo set up here and ready to go.
Yeah. So Windows 8 app. So Web API is basically a web service engine on top of ASP.NET, right? So it's ideal for delivering REST objects using REST calls to your web service, right? And then Windows 8 app has its own framework, has its own API, which is which is also called WinRT, right? And then through those APIs, you are calling a web API on the server side and delivering objects, right? And calling those objects.
Okay, right, excellent. Okay, so I've got my project pulled up here now, and we'll talk about a little bit more about this. But so you've covered the web API aspect of it. WNS gives us a really easy way. There's some recipes that the Azure team has put together. We install via NuGet, and then we get this really quick and easy way to access WNS and send out notifications for whatever platform that we need to. In this particular case, I've built a Windows 8 app. So this is inside of a single solution where we've got the API, which has some MVC website stuff. We've talked about this one already. This one has the Windows 8 app itself, and it's connecting to that customer API. Again, we can control all kinds of things as far as web points go or endpoints go, which database we're accessing, if we're running locally or in the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to run this Windows 8 app. Customer Manager, we make a call out. Of course, we're hoping that service comes
It's
live.
calling the web API.
Hey, there it
service.
is. Yeah, absolutely. So now I'm inside of here. I'm looking at Johnny Porter, and somebody else, for example, you perhaps, you're over in your web browser. I'm looking at this Johnny Porter thing, and somebody else is already entering details, and there's a new customer coming in or a new invoice. Look at that. New customer added Jeff. So I can pop out of here, and all of a sudden I've got Jeff, who works at Coolcom. All of these details or whatever that you've just entered, and it's super duper guy, perfect duper guy, yeah. This is actually really cool because you were on an ASP.NET MVC website, and you entered some details in. Now it could have been from a mobile client or anything else, or even from within a different copy of this Windows 8 app that's
Anywhere.
running.
Yeah.
And anything that hits the API is calling out to these services. Let's have a quick look at how that works inside of our environment. So the web API is right here, and what we've done is simply, let me minimize some of this Chrome here, get this out of the way. Exactly what am I trying to do? This is my register channel, so I actually want to get to my API. I'm going to stop this app, drill into the API, look at the controller. I want the customer controller. We're going to have a look here. We've got this send notification method that we've got that just takes a customer parameter, and then it builds up the, here I'm using a Toast Content Factory to create the text O2. There's a number of different toasts we can create. We can embed images and all those kinds of things. A new customer was added. We set the text to be the customer's name. That's how I knew it was Jeff that you added to the app. And then finally, for everybody that's listening, because again, we could have 50 people running the Windows 8 app, or they could have a Windows Phone app that's on there as well. We're actually sending out this information, and in this case, I'm also using some trace here. I'm listening. I can listen to the trace stream that's actually happening as well. So just a complete mixed brew of everything that is going on. So from that point, the notification is sent, and then inside of my Windows 8 app, I've actually already set up, I'm configured inside of the Windows 8 app to listen to that notification. I get that toast, I know how to handle it and those kinds of things. When you click on it, it can drill right back into your app. So wonderful, the thing actually,
So basically what you are showing is Windows Azure websites serving to mobile clients.
To mobile clients, to tablets, to Windows 8, to iOS, Android, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's just whatever you want. In the back end, we've got Web API running on Windows Azure websites.
And then using other services like notification service within Azure.
Other aspects of the Azure ecosystem. So, and we can go in and have a look at that as well. Now, there's a number of things that you have to do in order to get this running. This, I want to point out, a good friend of mine, Corey Fowler, who works on the Windows Azure evangelism team, he actually wrote this. There's an entire article on how to build this customer API type approach or whatever. So be sure, we'll make sure that we have the links and all of that in the content and on blog posts, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you follow up with that, and you can walk through that, creating that demo yourself. If you've never done anything before with Web API, Windows 8, and Windows Azure, the whole thing will be like a morning's worth of work. So you're going to spend 3 or 4 hours, but your brain is going to go because it's going to be awesome. And if you've done it before, I was actually able to work through pretty much everything inside of an hour. So if you've got some experience on top of Azure and Windows 8 and working with Windows Azure websites, this is going to be a piece of cake for you to get through. Okay, so wow, that was.
Are we done?
That was 6 demos in 32 minutes. I think that was not bad, and we only had one little run in there. Let me pull the slide deck up. We've got some housekeeping to do before we kind of seal this off. First of all, let's pop back into our slide deck here. Before we get too far, I want to remind everybody that a really important aspect of doing these MVAs, and as presenters who are trying to make sure that we're getting important information over to you, if it's not useful for us, it's not useful for us to spend this time. There is a poll at the end of the module. I think it's below the video, so you can see it right now. Just make sure you click on that. Let us know. Give us some feedback. The time was short to plow through 6 demos that quickly, and we understand that, but I think there's a lot of really good information in the slide deck.
And so the required thing is feedback and poll, right?
That's right.
An optional thing is my book.
Yeah, support the books. Find us on...
Support the book, support education.
Yeah, that's right. Support poor writers. Find us on Amazon, and you'll be able to support us that way. So in this module, though, we did cover a lot of things really quickly. We talked about hybrid connectivity. We talked about that sample app, that cloud survey app that you can download free. It's part of the Windows Azure training kit.
Office 365 domain.
A very important thing.
Huge in enterprise applications.
Absolutely. We looked at some stuff off the stack, Node.js and MongoDB. Again, there's some great tutorials out there to help you with that stuff as well.
And the new pattern to think about. Right. So let cloud make you think. Right. That's what this pattern is all about.
Exactly.
It's not about the pattern, it's about you.
There are some wonderful things that you can take advantage, leverage right from out of the box, but if it doesn't meet your costing model, you can come up with new ways to kind of cover this off.
Be creative.
Absolutely. And then finally, we did have a look at push notifications with that Windows 8 app, which worked wonderfully. And I mean, that was like 7 things working together as well. So it was as complicated
as... This was the lightning round.
So it was. We were quick.
It was
absolutely.
It was in the name.
I have a few quick thanks that we have a few quick thanks that we want to throw out here. Sangeeta helped us. She was our champion here that made all of this come together the day. Barry and Danny are here in the room, in the studio. Woohoo! Keeping everything running for us and giving us great feedback throughout the show. And we've got a bunch of subject matter experts
in the forum
answering questions all day. And of course, hey, Thank you guys, everybody who
Hey.
came on. Now that guy at the end there didn't join us too much. I'm happy about that.
That's what his job was.
Exactly.
Was to protect us from where he is and not to join us. Right?
But follow us on Twitter, and
Yeah.
we will do our best to keep up to date. You can see our blog posts. I'm at jameschambers.com. You can find yours.
Tejasvi Redkar. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Dynamic Deploy, make sure you check our books out on Amazon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. It was awesome to run through all this today.
It was a pleasure.
Excellent.